You're listening to Bad Dog Agility, bringing you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility. And now, here are your hosts, Sarah and Esteban.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 192. Today's podcast is brought to you by Elite Science. Unlock your dog's full potential with a unique competitive edge solution, 1TDC. 1-tetradecanol complex is a patented blend of unique fatty acid oils designed to safely and effectively keep joints and muscles at their best to maximize performance and shorten recovery time. 1TDC is the next generation of fatty acids and is used by many current and past national agility champions and world team members. All of our listeners will automatically qualify for a great 1TDC special offer by purchasing online at BDA1TDC.com. That's BDA, the number 1, TDC.com.
This podcast is also brought to you by HitItBoard.com. HitItBoard.com has the innovative training tools you need for agility. Having problems with the dog walker A-frame? The HitItBoard can fix that. Your dog doesn't like tugging? They'll love the Tug It. Can't move your A-frame around by yourself? The Move It can. Go to hititboard.com and use discount code BDA10 to get 10% off your order. That's hititboard.com.
Today, we're going to talk about technical debt in dog agility. So that is not a common thing you hear about in dog agility. So let's start by defining technical debt. Clearly, this is a Sarah-inspired podcast coming from the computer world, and Esteban is falling asleep. But that's okay, because we are going to get into some interesting correlations between software and dog agility. So technical debt in software is the concept that there is an implied cost of additional work caused by choosing an easy solution now instead of using a better approach that would take longer. So what we're talking about is we're making choices today and we're deferring some work till later, but the amount of work isn't the same. It's more work later. And this is something we've talked about lots on the podcast. We just haven't given it this word.
I'm going to need an example.
All right.
I'm going to need a dog agility example.
All right. Dog agility example. Here it comes. And that is any kind of poor foundation training where you get out with your dog, you skip some steps, you can kind of sort of do an obstacle, let's say, but only under ideal circumstances. And then you discover that it's going to be a lot harder to fix the problem later. So, let's talk about weave pulls. You've got straight on weave pull entries. Your dog can only do easy entries. The handler handles around it. They get out there and do all kinds of handling things to help their dog get the entry. And then they discover that trying to add in those difficult entries later becomes very difficult for them. Or slipping criteria. This is one that we've talked about plenty, is the idea that we let our criteria go in the ring for contacts and do it that way for years. And now suddenly our contacts get worse and worse and they become very hard to fix.
That one I think is a little more concrete. So let's say I'm doing a dog walk and my dog stops in the yellow. All 4 feet are in the yellow. There's nothing on the ground. And my criteria is 2 on, 2 off. Front 2 feet on the ground. And you have 2 choices. You can either wait for the dog to put those 2 front feet down, then, mark it and go on. Give them the cue for the next obstacle, like a jump or something. Or they're in the yellow, so it's a good legal contact. So even though they didn't meet criteria, you can go on. The saving there is several seconds. So I feel like the easier thing to do there is to not wait. It's just to, as soon as they hit the yellow, go ahead and release them and move on. But unfortunately, the retrain that will be required, because I assure you this decision will lead to problems with your contacts. The effort to retrain later is going to be huge. And so if you're just taking the time to wait the 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, even 20 seconds here, I would rather spend 20 seconds on 3 consecutive runs. That's a minute. Because I assure you in a year or 2 or 6 months or whenever you have to fix your contacts, it's not going to take 1 minute.
That's Right.
Okay, so that's a huge time difference.
Right. So that's a great example of this idea of technical debt. So if we've talked about these ideas before, and now all we're doing is giving it a cutesy computer science name, why even bother? Well, I think that it's interesting when I see very different areas of study come across similar ideas. And so as soon as I recognized some of the things that we see in agility as being kind of similar to some of the things that we see in software, that's a cool connection, but it's also cool because now we can take what other fields have learned or strategies that they've come up with for fixing problems, and we can see how those strategies apply to dog agility. So for technical debt in the software world, there's this constant evaluation of, okay, so we've maybe cut some corners, we've done something really quickly now, and there's a price that we're paying, but is it worth fixing? Do we stay with the status quo? Do we stay with our contact that's just barely there? Or do we put in the time that it takes to fix it so that, we can get more cues and things like that? And I came across an article about software that gave 3 different ways of evaluating technical debt so that you could put together a better picture for whether or not you should fix it. And the 3 things that we look at are impact. So why is this, what is the problem that we have created here? What is happening? You're missing a contact. Okay, well, that's a blown contact call. That's the immediate impact. What's the cost to fix? So how long does it take to fix this the right way? Different things in agility take a different amount of time to fix. Sometimes it could take years of retraining. Sometimes it could take one consolidated session to fix a particular problem. And that's going to change how you think about it. And then the third that's an interesting, more subtle idea is the idea of contagion. So how likely is this problem to spread to other areas?
Like a virus.
Like a virus. So if we go back to some of our examples and say, okay, let's take concrete examples. I'm a handler and my contacts are not very good. I get called on them a lot. I have to be right next to my dog. So if I want to evaluate if it is worth it to go and fix this problem, and I look at these 3 things, I could say, okay, well, the impact. Why is it a problem? I'm missing dog walk calls. I have to be right there at the end of the dog walk. But it can be different for different people. So if I am a handler and I have a relatively slow dog and I'm a relatively fast handler, then the fact that I have to be right at the bottom of the dog walk to manage, the impact is not that bad. I can be there. I can be there to help my dog. And then I can move on with the rest of the course. Take the exact same problem of having to be at the bottom of the dog walk and you have a really, really fast dog. And suddenly I can't always be there. I get more calls at the end of the dog walk. And then even when I am there, I get mistakes right after the dog walk because my dog takes off courses because now I'm always handling from behind right after contacts. So even though the problem is the same, the impact can be very different for different dog and handler teams.
Mm-hmm. I think a good example for myself is the running contacts, and that's I've got a problem with Gitchy. And we discovered this problem maybe a year or 2 ago when we knew for sure. And it's that I cannot be lateral from the dog walk. So let's say if I'm standing within 5 or 6 feet of the dog walk, it's okay. She's going to hit a very high percent of the time, almost 100%, whether or not it's a sharp turn or a straight exit, right? Whether I'm a little far behind or I'm a little far ahead, I just can't be lateral. So if I am lateral to her, whether or not it's a turn, whether or not it's straight, she misses at a very high frequency. How high? Over half the time, over 50%. So you can retrain it. It takes a lot of time and work. And in the meantime, even basic straight exit approaches, the dog may miss, and they may miss in trials, right? So this is going to impact your trialing. This is going to impact the way you do your practices. Now you got to put all that energy toward working and fixing this issue. Or, like you were saying, I can look at the cost. And so if Gitchy's running between 70 and 100 competition runs in a given calendar year, which I think is approximately what she does with me in any one given year, a full year where she's, healthy the whole year, not having puppies or something, there's only going to be 5 runs where there's the possibility that I may need to use lateral distance on a dog walk. Otherwise, the courses are a little more, I don't want to say basic, but they're constructed in a way that I can use my long legs and speed to get from one place to another and stay close to her on the dog walk. And in combination with my handling skill and ability to rear cross and throttle from a distance and things like that, I'm not too worried about what comes after the contact. But those 5 courses that I'm thinking about, maybe 5 out of 100 each year, are the ones that you see at tryouts. We're like, for example, World Team Tryouts, which we're going to be at in 2 or 3 weeks. And last year was a great example of that. She had a dog walk exit where she hit the contact on the dog walk exit, but because I had to be so close to manage it, couldn't get the next part. And we got a run by on the next jump. So a lot of people will look at that and be like, oh, she ran by that jump. There's some kind of problem there. No, the problem was I couldn't get lateral on the dog walk. It's a hidden problem that spectators don't know about. They think there's nothing wrong with the contact. They think, this guy's running slow or this guy's X, Y, or Z. But it's because I couldn't get that lateral distance. That was the cost to me. But that was 1 run out of 5 on that weekend that required it. There's only 3 standard runs. The other 2 are jumpers. So it's really 3 out of 100. So am I going to spend hours and hours and hours in all these sessions fixing this one thing basically for 1 run a year? And the answer was no. Like literally you could, if she had run clean the other 4 runs, she would have gotten an automatic spot on the world team. You could literally qualify for the world championship without fixing this problem. So it doesn't make sense to do it. In that context, I would argue that it did not.
And that's why I think this is an interesting framework, because we don't have unlimited time. And so this kind of gives you a way to prioritize the gaps in your training. We all have gaps in our training, and to kind of prioritize them based on the impact, based on the time and the effort that it takes to fix the issue, but then also based on how likely that issue is to have other more subtle effects. And that's that contagion idea. So in this case, there is a small contagion for your lack of the lateral distance. And that was what you were talking about, the missed jump. That was the spread of your contact issue into the rest of the course, but only the next 1 jump. Right? The thing that happens right after the contact. That's where it spreads to, and only on courses that require lateral distance after that dog walk. So not every dog walk, just those few times. If we take, let's take an advanced skill like threadling, which there are a large percentage of people that don't have a really strong threadle on their dog. And so what is the impact? You can't threadle. You might have to do a convoluted series of multiple front crosses to get through a section of the course that would typically require a threadle.
Mm-hmm. In fact, that's very popular right now. People have entire online little instructional courses and videos, like how to do
threadling
without
teaching,
actually doing a threadle.
Right, exactly. So there are ways around it. There are workarounds for it. What is the time that it takes to teach a true, I guess, a trained threadle,
it takes time.
That's
even
like
people that
verbal.
think they can threadle can't really threadle.
Right. And then what's the contagion? Well, there I would say the contagion is extremely small. If you don't have the threadle skill, then you have problems when threadles arise, maybe, but really nowhere else on course.
Right.
It doesn't spread to the rest of your training. And so that's an area where you could legitimately make the choice to not pursue it. And I think
many people do, and many people felt that about backsides. And then what happened?
They became more common. And
backsides they started showing up everywhere. And guess what?
The impact went up of not having a backside.
And so at the time you thought, when am I really going to see a backside? When am I really going to make the finals at nationals? And then suddenly, bam, you're in the finals at nationals with your 8-year-old veteran and you never taught him a backside.
That's right. And it brings me to another interesting correlation again to this idea of technical debt, because some people are going to say, well, I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I'm going to have solid foundation training. I'm going to do things right the first time, which is ideal, because this whole idea is that you basically cut corners and you pay a price later. So if you have more solid upfront training, you save time later on. True. But nobody is immune to technical debt. And here's the reason. Let's go back to my software example. I could write perfect code in 2006, do everything right, cut no corners. I don't do anything to cause myself technical debt later on, right? But then time passes. It's 2018, right? New computer capacities, new internet speeds make my perfect 2006 code obsolete. It no longer is the best way of doing things in 2018, even if it was the best way of doing things in 2006. The same thing happens in agility. The sport is changing. As you said, it could be the prevalence of certain things out on the course, more backsides, more threadles, being required. Depending on your goals, the relative competitive nature of other people, like the running contacts, right? The relative prevalence of running contacts affects how important it is that you have a running contact if your goal is to make world teams or compete internationally. At some point, it may be, if your goal is to be highly competitive at nationals, there are going to be certain skills that
agility in general is just changing so much, and it's changing within the lifetime of a single dog. So this is the old way that I used to think about agility. And I think a lot of people thought about agility this way. You're new, you come into the sport, you learn it. Your whole first dog is basically spent learning it. Now, after you know everything you need to know, you go out and get a second dog, and you make sure that second dog is great, high drive, good breeding, all that stuff. And then you're going to go and do awesome things with that second dog. Okay. But it didn't work out that way for two reasons. One, the second dog didn't always turn out to be that ideal dog. And then you had a whole new set of problems, and you had to learn how to train through those issues. But, also number two, the sport would change. So everything that you were doing in terms of handling, or even the way you taught your dog how to do a teeter, taught your dog how to do weave pulls, suddenly there were better ways to do it. Dogs were getting faster performance. And now your old way that you were a master of is no longer the gold standard. And now you've got that same problem. And that's why the sport evolved. But if it was evolving every 8 to 10 years, that's okay, because that's approximately the lifetime of a dog. But now when things are changing every 2 to 3 years, right? How many of us dream about having the perfect foundation on your puppy? Well, now with things changing every 2 to 3 years, I guarantee you that whatever foundation you're doing today is not going to be the gold standard in 2 to 3 years. And that means right as your dog's debuting, they already have holes that your next puppy supposedly isn't going to have. Right. So they got this technical debt. Okay. I'm getting warmed up to your topic a little bit here. And I was thinking of mentioning a high contagion example. Okay. Right? Something that spreads and goes everywhere. And I love it because I've been getting emails about this, and people want to know, what should I do with my puppy? Where's your puppy content? Show me all your good puppy stuff. Well, first, we do have great puppy and foundation stuff. We have it in the academy for our VIP members. And you can always go to the website, baddogagility.com, excuse me, and just type in puppy training, and it'll point you to a couple free articles. What is the number one skill that I care about? Well, I frequently run into other dogs, young dogs, similar age to my young dog at the time, who can sit down, do tricks, and do all those sorts of things. My dogs can't do any of that. I don't even bother teaching a start line, and I use a stand position until I'm within a month or two of debuting at a trial, right? So my dog can weave before they can do anything else. My border collie still can't sit. She can't sit on cue. She can't sit on a hand command. I could probably lure her with a treat. Okay. She's 6 years old. She does a stand at the start for those who are curious. Yeah. So never bothered teaching her to sit. So, people were very interested in what order do you teach things? When do you teach to sit? When do you teach to down? I'm like, whoa. I'm only interested in one thing, and that's creating a reward system for the dog, creating a high value reinforcer, something that they are going to go bananas over. For some people, that's pie. You can get to me with a lot of food. For most people, honestly, that aren't me, it's money. Okay. If I paid you enough money, you would do almost anything. All right. And money can be a great motivator for a lot of people. Okay. People work jobs that they don't like. They keep doing it, and they're doing it for the money. All right. So I need money for my dog. And that's where I spend all of my time. My money of choice for dogs is tugging, but your choice of money can also be food. But it's not just, will my dog tug? Will my dog eat food? Of course they will. Any dog will, at least for a short period of time. But can they do it with distraction? Can they do it for a minute? Can your dog eat when they're not hungry? Can your dog eat when they're stressed? Can they do it at the ringside? Can they do it after a variable number of behaviors?
Well, and let me rephrase what you said, which was you said, can they do it? Can they do it? I would argue you want them to want to do it. I mean, that's the whole idea of it being a reinforcer.
Right,
not just
right.
that they're doing it, they desperately want to do it.
That's right. If they don't want it, if they're not too into it, let's say you got a person and they are a trust fund baby, they have lots of money. And even if you're paying them $1,000 an hour, if they've got $1 billion sitting in the bank, guess what? They are not motivated by your money, right? You need something that's going to really motivate them. Now, once I have that in place, then you can teach everything. First skill I'm going to teach is attention. So without this big reinforcer, that's skill number 1. And then skill number 2 is the attention, and use skill number 1 to create skill number 2. And then after that, it doesn't matter. Teach whatever you want in whatever order you want to teach it. Let's say you shortcut. This is what we're talking about, right? Taking shortcuts. So you take a shortcut and you're like, okay, my dog can tug for about 10 seconds. You know, they're kind of little mouthy on there, and I have to use a very special toy. You know, one with lots of fur and things in it. And I have to tug in just the right way, you know, and only here at the house. Then when you go to practice and you try and use that toy, or you leave that toy at home, or there's another dog around and suddenly your dog can't do it, the answer is to take the time to lay the foundation, do all of your proofing, you know, build that skill for your dog so they can do it in a variety of contexts. Okay. The shortcut is to say, this is good enough, and let's try to use it in the training environment. And then now you have a weak reinforcer that you're trying to use to teach complex behaviors in agility, and the dog doesn't do those behaviors very well. A dog that is highly motivated to tug or highly motivated to eat the food, okay, will work harder, longer, and faster than for something that they don't really want.
Right.
And that's just the truth. And that is something now you can go and take your weak reinforcer and teach all of agility, every obstacle. But guess what? Maybe your dog doesn't run very fast.
And here's the magic word, drive. The drive for agility. That is the skill. And the thing about thinking of drive as a skill is that it's relative. It's a little hard to define. It's more of a feeling than a thing. But if you don't have it, if your dog doesn't have that drive, and you continue to bring them into the agility situation over and over and over, then, and here's where you were getting to, highly infectious. That infects all of
everything.
Agility.
If your dog has bad drive, not only are they going to be stinky at the weaves, they're going to be stinky at their contacts. They're going to be stinky at jumpy. Their recall is not going to be very good. They're not going to be motivated to sit. They're going to wander off. They're going to go visit people. It affects every aspect of the performance. Whereas if you have a bad throttle and you got lazy with that, that's all it affects. Just the throttle, maybe the obstacle or two that comes before and after it. And that's limited spread, limited contagion. But this drive issue, it infects everything, the entire way you do agility. Now, most people do this. They debut it without this strong reinforcer that I'm going to spend year, 18 months, 24 months working on. People aren't going to do that. They're not going to take that time. They're going to get out there. Okay, that's fine. Totally, you can do that. I totally understand that. And they're going to work and try and improve the drive with time. A lot of these dogs will improve.
That's true.
Okay, and these people are willing to do that work just so they can get out there a little bit sooner. They find it more enjoyable, whatever. That's fine. But there's going to be a group of people, they're just not able to fix it at all. Okay? Because the problem is that intractable, that severe. They even come to you for help, and you're like, well, you need to do this, and maybe not go to shows for a little while, and go back to the beginning and do all that. And they're like, that's too much. They wouldn't have had to do all of that if they'd just done it right from the start. If they'd spent a little bit of time, an extra month or two, an extra couple of weeks, just building up that skill.
And let me give you another example of this idea of contagion and how you might analyze it with your dog. And that is, there are dogs, let's take the weave poles. There are dogs who can be slow on the weave poles and then fast everywhere else. There are dogs who, when they know the weave poles are coming, they slow down several obstacles before and shut down after, right? So again, this idea of contagion, I think, is really powerful. And even in the technical debt article that gave me some of these ideas, it's sort of a novel way to get a fuller picture of the problem, to really think of those follow-on effects when you're analyzing any of these problems. Another thing that we can, I think, borrow from software development as far as technical debt is strategies for actually addressing it. So we've talked about strategies for identifying its impact, its true impact, right? Including the contagion and all of that. That's helping you decide how big of a problem it is and whether or not you should fix it. But now let's talk about some strategies for actually fixing it. Because in software, I think there are a couple of different ways that you can go about it. One is kind of point forward rigor. And that is to say, okay, I have some problems. Going point forward, I'm not going to perpetuate them. I'm going to, every new skill that I teach, I'm going to teach to a little bit of a higher standard before I put it into the ring, for instance, something like that, right? I've learned my lesson. I have some holes. I'm not going to create new holes, but I'm not necessarily right this very second fixing the holes that I have, right? That's one strategy that you can take. And then I think another strategy is, periodic focus on the technical debt. So, if in the software world, right, when you have somebody who is waiting for the thing that you're building, it's kind of hard to tell them, yeah, we're not gonna really do anything that you can see for the next year because we're gonna fix all of this stuff underneath the covers, right? To make our software better and more resilient and all of that, right? Nobody wants to say, sure, don't do, I'm going to pay you for a year. I'm not going to really see anything, but you're promising me that it's going to be better, at the end. And it's kind of the same way in agility. It's really hard to just focus on these gaps all the time and not go out and trial and not get the fun aspects of agility. And so we can take a periodic focus where we say, okay, this month I'm going to take a break from everything that I'm doing to address this particular hole. I'm going to take this month. And we do see that a lot with contacts. I'm going to take a month off and go and fix this problem. And then I'm going to go back into kind of my normal routine.
I think it's always the way to go. It's the approach that I take at start line. I've never not been able to fix a dog's start line, and I've had the absolute worst dogs, the kind where as soon as you take off a leash, they just run right out of the ring. It just takes a little bit of time up front, but the benefit is then you don't have to deal with those intermittent failures later on in the dog's career that I think is a really big deal. And, especially when you look at these high contagion spots, everybody's looking for the quick answer, right? They're like, isn't there a handling thing that I can do that's going to make my dog faster? Is it rear crosses? Isn't that slowing my dog down? Maybe if I did all blind crosses, my dog is magically going to speed up here. Well, no, it turns out the answer is it's the drive issue, right? Especially for dogs that like come into the ring and they start off really slow, but they finish pretty fast. And you're like, man, if only my dog would run like they did the last 5 jumps. If they could do that the whole obstacle or the whole course, I mean, my dog would be amazing. I'd be making the finals every year at nationals. And so, there's more of a systemic problem, an underlying issue not related to any handling maneuver or system or specific obstacle. That goes back to kind of that drive thing. And that's why for me, it's so important. I take the time to get it right. And that's where it's hard. Like you were saying, you tell the client, well, we need to do all this work, but you're just not going to see very much results. I'm saying, well, you need to do this, 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 and this. And then they do it for a week and they're like, okay. And then I went to the next trial and it looks kind of the same. It's very hard to detect those improvements because at that point, you're so far along in the process. It's slow and painful and it takes a lot of work. And, just do it all up front is what I'm saying.
That's right. And then I think the last thing that I wanted to mention as we were talking through this is that sometimes I think also people get overwhelmed by all of the things that they feel like they need to do with their dog. And I think that it is okay. And I think this framework points it out. It is okay to not fix some things. It is okay to live with with particular deficits and particular holes if your evaluation process indicates that the cost way outweighs the benefit, right?
And I'm just going to cut in right here with a very specific concrete example. Again, we've talked about it before. Get you at really bad start lines. That I decided I had to fix, and right from the start. The dog walk issue that I talked about where you can't get that lateral distance, basically I'm living with that. I'm going to go to tryouts next week knowing that I have to be by the dog walk. And if it costs me a cue, it costs me a cue. Oh, well, what was the decision process there, right? It goes back to what I was saying. 100 runs, I might see that one time, probably going to see it this weekend, or possibly could see it this weekend. Guess how often I see a start line?
A lot.
Every single time you step up to the start line, right? It's right there. It's the start of the agility trial behavior chain, the start line right there. It's every single time. That is how important the start line behavior is.
That's right. And actually, one last point that I'll make because you just made me think about it, and that is timing. The timing also matters because, for you and tryouts, even if you wanted to fix it, you can't when the time is really close to whatever event it is that you're preparing for, right? And, the time to go in and rip out the guts of your code is not 1 week before you put it out to the world, right? That is not the time. Better to leave it all duct taped together and then later when things have calmed down, it's a little bit quieter, that's the time to go in and start fixing everything. Same thing in agility. If you are going to make some big handling change, some system change in your handling, and you go to the invitational every year, the best time to start that work is right after the invitational. You need to find the right time to put in that work. All right. Well, that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Elite Science and HitItBoard.com. Happy training.